Welcome back to the Numis Explorer, coin hunters, collectors, and treasure seekers, and welcome to another fascinating journey into the world of rare United States coins, because today we are taking a closer look at the 1994 quarter dollar and the incredible possibility that an unusual example with a genuine minting error could be worth far more than its face value. You may have heard sensational claims that a 1994 quarter dollar could be worth $139 million, but that figure should be treated as a hypothetical or attention-grabbing maximum rather than the established value of an ordinary 1994 quarter, because most examples are common and are worth only their normal collector or face value depending on condition. The real excitement begins when a coin contains an authentic, unusual, and potentially rare mint error that separates it from millions of ordinary pieces. The 1994 Washington quarter was produced at the Philadelphia Mint and carries the P Mint mark, and because these coins were manufactured in huge quantities for everyday circulation, finding a truly dramatic error can be an exciting discovery for collectors. One of the first things to examine is the strike itself, because a quarter that was struck noticeably off-center may have a major visual difference from a normal coin. An off-center error occurs when the planchet is not properly positioned between the dies at the moment of striking, causing part of the design to be missing or shifted toward one side. The degree of the displacement can matter, and an authentic major off-center strike with the date and mint mark still visible can be particularly interesting because those details help identify the coin. Another possibility is a broad strike, which can happen when a coin is struck without being properly contained by the collar, allowing the metal to spread outward and producing an unusual shape or enlarged appearance. A genuine broad strike can look very different from a standard quarter and may immediately attract attention when placed beside a normal example. There are also die-related errors that collectors watch for, including die cracks, die breaks, cuds, and unusual raised or missing areas created by problems with the dies used to strike the coins. A die break can create a raised area on the finished coin, while a cud can appear when part of the die breaks away and leaves an unusual blank or raised region on the coin. These characteristics can sometimes provide clues about what happened during production and may create additional collector interest. Another possibility that receives enormous attention from coin hunters is doubling. A 1994 quarter with genuine doubled die characteristics could be significantly more interesting than an ordinary example, especially if the doubling is clearly visible on important design elements. However, collectors must be careful because not every apparent doubling is a valuable doubled die. Mechanical or machine doubling can create flattened or shifted-looking details that may appear impressive to an inexperienced observer but are not necessarily the same as a true doubled die created during the die-making process. That distinction is extremely important when evaluating claims of extraordinary value. The weight of the coin can also provide valuable information. A quarter that weighs significantly different from the expected standard could potentially indicate an unusual planchet or another mint-related problem, although a weight difference can also result from damage, corrosion, environmental exposure, or other causes. This is why a suspected error should never be judged from appearance alone. Measurements, weight, diameter, thickness, and professional examination can help determine whether the unusual characteristic happened at the mint or occurred after the coin entered circulation. One of the most exciting possibilities would be a wrong planchet error, where a coin is accidentally struck on a planchet intended for another denomination. Such an error can produce unusual weight, color, thickness, or dimensions and can become highly desirable if authenticated. Imagine discovering a 1994 quarter that looks slightly different from every other quarter you have seen, then finding that its weight and composition do not match the expected specifications and that experts determine it was struck on an incorrect planchet. That would be a completely different situation from simply finding a damaged quarter. Another category collectors may investigate is a struck-through error. During the minting process, foreign material can sometimes interfere with the striking operation and leave an unusual impression, missing detail, or distorted portion of the design. Depending on the nature and severity of the error, such a coin can become an interesting collectible. There may also be errors involving the collar, where the metal can spread or distort in unusual ways. Some coins can display dramatic edge abnormalities, and because the edge is often overlooked by casual collectors, checking all around the coin can sometimes reveal details that are not obvious from the obverse and reverse. The condition of the 1994 P-quarter is another major factor. A coin with a rare and dramatic error that remains in excellent condition may receive far more attention than a similar error that has been heavily scratched, cleaned, bent, or worn down through decades of circulation. Collectors often value coins with strong original surfaces, sharp details, attractive luster, and minimal damage. This is why you should never clean a suspected rare coin. Scrubbing, polishing, chemicals, or abrasive materials can permanently alter the surface and potentially reduce its collector appeal. If your 1994 P-quarter appears unusual, handle it carefully by the edges and keep it protected while you research the characteristics. It is also important to remember that damage can sometimes imitate a mint error. A coin may become scratched by another object, flattened by machinery, exposed to chemicals, damaged by heat, or altered by someone attempting to make it look rare. These post-mint problems can create unusual shapes and marks, but they are not the same as genuine manufacturing errors. This is one reason authentication is so important when a coin appears potentially valuable. Professional experts can examine the surfaces, strike characteristics, metal composition, and other details to determine whether the unusual feature is consistent with a legitimate mint error. The idea of a $139 million 1994 P-quarter is certainly exciting for a YouTube treasure hunting story, but responsible collectors should understand that extraordinary prices require extraordinary evidence. A normal 1994 P-quarter is not automatically worth millions simply because it has a P-mint mark or because it is from 1994. Its value would have to come from something genuinely scarce, desirable, and verifiable. In a real auction, the final price of an exceptional coin would depend on authenticity, rarity, condition, demand, provenance, and the willingness of serious collectors to compete for it. The strongest discoveries are those supported by professional documentation and credible market evidence rather than internet rumors. That does not make the hunt any less exciting. In fact, it makes it even more fascinating because every unusual coin becomes a mystery that must be solved. Think about how many quarters have passed through restaurants, stores, vending machines, cash registers, banks, old coin jars, and family collections over the years. Somewhere among those ordinary coins, unusual mint errors can occasionally survive unnoticed for decades. A collector examining a group of 1994 P-quarters might first notice nothing special, but then one coin could show a dramatic shift in the strike, an unusual rim, a strange edge, a possible double detail, or a weight that demands further investigation. That moment of discovery is what keeps coin hunters searching. It is not simply about finding a huge dollar amount, it is about uncovering a tiny piece of manufacturing history that tells a story about what happened inside the minting process. Every genuine error is essentially evidence that a complex production system did not work perfectly on one particular coin. For collectors, that imperfection can become the most interesting feature of all. So if you have a 1994 P-quarter, do not immediately assume it is either worthless or a guaranteed fortune. Instead, inspect it carefully and compare it with a normal quarter. Look at the date, mint mark, lettering, Washington's portrait, the reverse design, the rim, the edge, and the overall alignment. Check whether any unusual feature appears raised, recessed, shifted, missing, or distorted in a way that could have occurred during striking. If something looks promising, avoid altering the coin and seek a knowledgeable numismatist or professional grading and authentication service for a serious evaluation. The difference between an ordinary damaged coin and a legitimate mint error can be enormous, and the difference between a common error and a truly rare variety can be even greater. That is why careful research is more valuable than simply believing a headline. The possibility of a spectacularly valuable 1994 P-quarter captures our imagination because it represents the ultimate treasure hidden in plain sight, but the real lesson is that knowledge is what allows collectors to recognize unusual coins when they appear. A quarter that looks ordinary at first glance may deserve a second look, and a second look can sometimes lead to a fascinating discovery. So keep checking your change, examine old collections, revisit those forgotten coin jars, and pay close attention to unusual pieces instead of automatically spending them. The next coin you inspect may not be worth $139 million, but it could still contain a genuine mint error that makes it much more interesting and valuable than its face value. Thank you for joining us here at the Numis Explorer, where every coin can tell a story and every unusual detail can become the beginning of a new numismatic mystery. So keep hunting, keep learning, and keep searching through your coins, because the most exciting discovery may be hiding in your collection right now. Next, 1981 quarter dollar coin. Today we are taking a fascinating look at the 1981 quarter dollar, a coin that may appear ordinary at first glance but can become extremely interesting when it contains a genuine minting error, unusual variety, or rare production mistake. You may have heard sensational claims that a 1981 quarter dollar could be worth as much as $135 million, and while a figure like that should be treated as a dramatic hypothetical claim rather than the established value of an ordinary 1981 quarter, the idea highlights an important truth about coin collecting. Rare and authenticated errors can sometimes make an otherwise common coin dramatically more desirable. Most 1981 Washington quarters are not worth millions, and many circulated examples trade close to ordinary collector or face value levels, but the real excitement begins when a particular coin shows characteristics that separate it from the standard coins produced by the Denver Mint. The 1981 quarter carries the D Mint mark indicating production at the Denver Mint, and because these quarters were made for everyday commerce, they were exposed to circulation, handling, scratching, wear, and damage for decades. That makes a genuine mint error especially fascinating because it can preserve evidence of something unusual that happened during the manufacturing process. One of the first possibilities collectors examine is an off-center strike, which occurs when a planchet is not positioned correctly between the dies when the striking pressure is applied. Instead of producing a perfectly centered design, the coin may show a portion of the design shifted toward the edge, with part of the design missing from the opposite side. A dramatic off-center strike can be particularly interesting if the date and mint mark remain visible because those features help identify the coin. The greater the legitimate displacement, combined with good condition and clear evidence that the error occurred during minting, the more attention the coin may receive. Another possibility is a broad strike, which can occur when the collar fails to properly contain the planchet during striking. The metal may spread outward, creating an unusual appearance around the edge and making the coin look wider or differently shaped than a normal quarter. A broad-struck 1981 quarter can attract collectors because the abnormal shape is directly connected to the striking process rather than ordinary circulation damage. There are also die errors that deserve close attention, including die cracks, die breaks, cuds, and other unusual raised features. Dies used to strike millions of coins can develop wear or damage, and when part of that die damage is transferred to the coin, it can create distinctive characteristics. A die crack may appear as a raised line across part of the design, while a larger die break can create a more dramatic raised area. A cud can occur when a piece of the die face breaks away, leaving an area of missing design or an unusual raised shape on the struck coin. These features can be fascinating to collectors because they represent a specific stage in the life of a die and can sometimes be associated with recognizable die states. Another major area of interest is possible doubling. If a 1981 quarter shows apparent doubling on the date, lettering, motto, or other design elements, collectors may want to investigate whether the feature is a genuine doubled die characteristic or simply mechanical doubling. This distinction is extremely important because not every coin that looks doubled is a valuable doubled die. Mechanical or machine doubling can occur during the striking process and may create flattened, shelf-like, or shifted-looking details, while a genuine doubled die is associated with doubling incorporated into the die itself. Proper identification can require magnification, comparison with known examples, and expert examination. The edge of the coin should also never be ignored. Some minting errors become much easier to recognize when the edge is inspected carefully. A coin may show an unusual rim, an abnormal edge profile, or characteristics suggesting a collar-related problem. Since many casual collectors only look at the front and back, checking the entire circumference can reveal information that might otherwise be missed. Another fascinating possibility is a wrong planchet error, where a coin is accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination or another type of coin. If a 1981 D quarter were genuinely struck on an incorrect planchet, its weight, thickness, diameter, and metallic appearance could differ from normal specifications. Such a discovery could be highly interesting, but it would require serious authentication because weight differences can also result from damage, corrosion, environmental exposure, or other causes. A scale can provide a useful clue, but weight alone cannot prove a mint error. The composition and physical dimensions need to be evaluated together, preferably by a qualified expert. There is also the possibility of a struck-through error, where foreign material becomes trapped between the die and the coin during striking and leaves an unusual depression, missing detail, or distorted design. Depending on the material and the appearance of the resulting impression, a struck-through error can become an interesting collectible. Some errors may be subtle, while others can be dramatic enough to immediately catch the attention of an experienced collector. Another category involves planchet flaws, where problems in the blank metal can produce cracks, laminations, clips, or other abnormalities. A clipped planchet, for example, may have an unusual curved or straight missing section caused by the blanking process. A genuine mint-made clip can look very different from a coin that was damaged after leaving the mint, and collectors often look for specific characteristics that help distinguish authentic planchet errors from post-mint damage. This is why simply seeing a strange shape is not enough to establish a major value. The origin of the feature matters. Condition also plays an important role in the potential desirability of a rare 1981 D quarter. A coin with a major authenticated error and strong preservation can attract much more attention than a heavily circulated example of the same error. Collectors may examine the sharpness of the details, surface preservation, original luster, contact marks, scratches, stains, and evidence of cleaning. A rare error that has been polished or aggressively cleaned may lose some of its appeal because collectors generally prefer original surfaces. If you think you have discovered an unusual 1981 D quarter, one of the most important things you can do is avoid cleaning it. Do not polish it, scrape it, scratch it, apply chemicals, or attempt to improve its appearance. Handling the coin carefully by the edges and storing it in an appropriate holder can help preserve its condition while you investigate it further. It is also important to understand that many strange-looking marks are not mint errors at all. A quarter can receive damage from vending machines, coin-counting equipment, other coins, tools, chemicals, heat, or rough handling. A scratch through the date does not automatically make the coin rare, and a flattened rim does not necessarily indicate a minting mistake. Even unusual discoloration can result from environmental exposure rather than an error at the mint. The difference between post-mint damage and a genuine manufacturing error is one of the most important lessons for anyone searching for valuable coins. This is also why sensational claims about enormous prices should be approached carefully. A headline saying that a 1981 D quarter is worth $135 million does not mean every 1981 D quarter has that value. Extraordinary valuations require extraordinary evidence, including authentication, rarity, exceptional condition, documented provenance, and a strong market willing to pay an extraordinary price. Without those factors, a huge number printed in a video title or social media post should not be treated as a guaranteed appraisal. Still, the possibility of discovering a valuable error is what makes coin hunting so exciting. Think about the journey of a quarter that entered circulation more than 4 decades ago. It could have passed through grocery stores, restaurants, vending machines, banks, cash registers, family collections, and countless hands before eventually ending up in a forgotten jar or drawer. During all those years, nobody may have noticed that it was different. A collector searching through a group of old coins might suddenly notice an unusual rim, a major design displacement, a possible die break, an abnormal edge, or a strange planchet characteristic. That moment of discovery can turn an ordinary coin searching session into a fascinating investigation. The coin may not be worth millions, but it may reveal a genuine piece of minting history that deserves preservation and further study. The 1981 D quarter is especially interesting because it belongs to an era when large numbers of Washington quarters were produced for circulation, meaning that examples are common but unusual errors can still be sought by collectors. When examining one, start by comparing it with a normal quarter from the same period. Look carefully at the date, D mint mark, lettering, Washington's portrait, the reverse design, the rim, the edge, and the overall alignment. Use magnification when appropriate, but remember that magnification can make ordinary damage look more dramatic than it really is. Compare the suspicious feature with reliable photographs and known examples of. Next, 1971 $quarter coin. Today we are taking a close look at the 1971 Washington $quarter and the fascinating possibility that an unusual example with a genuine mint error could be worth far more than its ordinary face value. You may have seen dramatic claims suggesting that a 1971 quarter could be worth as much as $130 million, but it is important to understand that such an enormous figure would be an extraordinary hypothetical claim, not the established value of a normal 1971 quarter. Most 1971 quarters are not worth anything remotely close to millions, but a genuinely rare, authenticated mint error or unusual variety can make a particular coin much more interesting to collectors, and that is where today's treasure hunt begins. The 1971 Washington quarter belongs to an important period in American coinage, and collectors continue to examine surviving examples for unusual characteristics that may have occurred during production. When searching for a potentially valuable 1971 quarter, the first thing to remember is that the year alone does not create a fortune. What matters is the combination of rarity, authenticity, condition, demand, and the exact nature of any error or variety found on the coin. A normal circulated quarter with scratches, dents, discoloration, or ordinary wear should not be confused with a genuine mint error. However, if a 1971 quarter contains a major production mistake that happened at the United States Mint, the story can become much more interesting. One of the most exciting possibilities is an off-center strike. This type of error occurs when the blank planchet is not positioned correctly between the dies during striking, causing the design to appear shifted toward one side. A dramatic off-center strike can leave part of the design missing while retaining enough of the date and other identifying details to establish what the coin is. The amount of displacement can influence collector interest, especially when the error is obvious and the coin remains in attractive condition. Another possibility is a broad strike, which can happen when the collar does not properly contain the planchet during the striking process. Instead of maintaining the expected dimensions, the metal can spread outward, creating an unusually broad appearance. A genuine broad-struck 1971 quarter can look dramatically different from a normal example and may attract attention from error collectors because the unusual shape is directly connected to the minting process. Collectors may also examine the rims and edges for signs of collar-related errors. The edge is often ignored when people look at coins, but it can provide important clues about what happened during production. A quarter with an unusual edge or rim formation may deserve closer inspection, especially if the characteristics appear consistent with a known minting error. Another area that can create excitement is die damage. The dies used to strike coins can develop cracks, breaks, and other abnormalities over time, and these problems can be transferred onto coins during striking. A die crack may appear as a raised line crossing part of the design, while a larger die break can create a noticeable raised area. A cud can occur when a portion of the die face breaks away, potentially leaving an unusual blank or raised region on the struck coin. These errors can be fascinating because they provide a record of the die's condition at a particular stage of its working life. If several coins share the same unusual die characteristic, collectors may sometimes be able to identify a die state or variety. Another possibility is doubling, which is one of the most commonly misunderstood areas of error collecting. A 1971 quarter might show what appears to be doubled lettering, a doubled date, or another doubled design element, but collectors must determine whether the appearance represents a genuine doubled die variety or ordinary mechanical doubling. Mechanical doubling can occur during striking and may produce a flattened, shelf-like secondary image, while a true doubled die originates from the die-making process and can have different visual characteristics. Because the distinction can be difficult for beginners, a suspected double die should be compared with reliable references and, when appropriate, examined by an experienced numismatist. Another fascinating possibility is a struck-through error. During the striking process, foreign material can sometimes become trapped between the die and the planchet, leaving an unusual depression, missing design detail, or distorted area on the finished coin. Depending on the material involved and the appearance of the resulting mark, a struck-through error can become a collectible curiosity. Some examples are subtle, while major examples can be dramatic and immediately recognizable. Collectors may also investigate planchet errors. Before a coin is struck, the metal blank must be prepared to the correct size, shape, weight, and composition. If something goes wrong during that process, the resulting coin can display an unusual clip, crack, lamination, or other planchet-related characteristic. A genuine clipped planchet, for example, can have a curved or straight section missing from the edge, and certain features around the affected area can help distinguish a true mint-made clip from damage that occurred later. A lamination-type problem can sometimes create peeling or separation in the metal, although environmental damage and corrosion can produce similar appearances, making careful examination essential. Another highly desirable possibility would be a wrong planchet error, where a quarter is accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination or composition. Such a coin could have unusual weight, thickness, diameter, or metallic appearance compared with a standard quarter. If a 1971 quarter were proven to have been struck on an incorrect planchet, it could become a fascinating and potentially valuable piece, but authentication would be essential. A strange color or unusual weight alone does not prove a wrong planchet error because coins can be altered by chemical exposure, corrosion, polishing, plating, environmental conditions, or other causes. Professional testing and examination may be needed to determine the true composition and origin of the unusual characteristics. This is why serious collectors do not rely only on photographs or dramatic descriptions. They compare measurements, surfaces, design details, strike characteristics, and known examples. Condition is another major factor in the potential value of a rare 1971 quarter. A dramatic mint error preserved with strong details, attractive original surfaces, and minimal damage can be far more appealing than a heavily worn or damaged example. Collectors often pay close attention to luster, surface marks, scratches, stains, cleaning, and overall preservation. A rare error does not automatically become extremely valuable simply because it is rare. Its condition and desirability can have a major impact on the market. If you believe you have discovered an unusual 1971 quarter, do not clean it or attempt to repair it. Avoid polishing, scratching, chemicals, abrasive materials, or any process designed to make the coin look better. Cleaning can permanently change the surfaces and may reduce collector appeal. Instead, handle the coin carefully by its edges and preserve it in its current condition while you investigate. One of the biggest mistakes new collectors make is assuming that every unusual mark is a mint error. A quarter that has been dropped on a hard surface may develop a dent, a coin caught in a machine may receive a scrape, and a piece carried for decades in a pocket may develop countless contact marks. These forms of damage can sometimes look dramatic, but they occurred after the coin left the mint. A genuine mint error, by contrast, is a mistake or abnormality created during the manufacturing process. Learning to distinguish those two categories is essential for anyone hoping to discover valuable coins. The same caution applies to internet claims about extraordinary values. A statement that a 1971 quarter is worth $130 million does not mean every coin from that year has that value. A normal quarter should never be treated as a guaranteed jackpot. An exceptional valuation would require extraordinary evidence, including a rare and authenticated error, outstanding condition, strong collector demand, credible provenance, and a legitimate market willing to pay such a price. The real value of a coin is determined by what buyers are actually willing to pay for a specific authenticated example, not simply by a number repeated online. Nevertheless, the possibility of finding a valuable error is what makes the search so exciting. Imagine opening an old coin jar and seeing dozens of ordinary quarters, then suddenly noticing one with a strange shape. Perhaps the rim appears unusually wide, the design is shifted, the edge looks different, or a portion of the lettering seems duplicated. That moment can transform an ordinary coin search into a fascinating investigation. You might compare the coin with another 1971 quarter and notice that something is definitely different. Then you might weigh it, inspect the edge, examine the surfaces under magnification, and research possible mint errors. Even if the coin does not turn out to be worth a fortune, the process teaches you how coins are manufactured and how errors can occur. And if the unusual characteristic turns out to be genuine, you may have discovered a piece of American minting history that deserves preservation. Next, 1985 D quarter dollar coin. Today we are taking a close look at the 1985 D Washington quarter dollar and the extraordinary possibility that a particular example with a genuine minting error or unusual variety could be worth dramatically more than its ordinary face value. You may have heard exciting claims that a 1985 D quarter dollar could be worth as much as $125 million, but it is important to understand that such an enormous figure is an extraordinary hypothetical claim rather than the established value of an ordinary 1985 D quarter. Most 1985 D quarters are common circulated coins and are not worth anything close to millions, but the story becomes much more interesting when a specific coin contains a legitimate mint error, unusual die characteristic, rare planchet mistake, or exceptionally desirable variety. That is where the real treasure hunt begins, because the value of an error coin does not come simply from the date or mint mark, it comes from what happened to that particular piece during the complicated manufacturing process at the United States Mint. The 1985 D quarter carries the D mint mark associated with the Denver Mint, and like other quarters made for everyday circulation, these coins passed through a highly mechanized production system involving planchets, dies, collars, striking pressure, and quality control procedures. Even though the process was designed to produce uniform coins, occasional mistakes and abnormalities could occur, and when those unusual pieces escaped into circulation, they sometimes became fascinating collectibles. One of the first things collectors may investigate on a 1985 D quarter is whether it shows an authentic off-center strike. An off-center strike occurs when the blank planchet is not properly positioned between the dies at the moment of striking, causing the design to be shifted toward one side. Depending on the severity of the displacement, part of the design may be missing while the remaining portion appears dramatically moved away from the normal center. A major off-center error can be especially interesting when the date and mint mark remain visible because those details help establish the coin's identity. The greater the genuine displacement and the more attractive the overall appearance, the more attention an error collector may give it. Another possibility is a broad strike, which can happen when the collar does not properly contain the planchet during striking. Without normal collar containment, the metal may spread outward, producing a coin that appears wider or differently shaped than a standard quarter. A genuine broad-struck 1985 D quarter can be visually dramatic and may be far more interesting than a normal example because the unusual shape is connected to the minting process rather than damage that occurred later. Collectors can also inspect the rim carefully because collar-related problems can sometimes create unusual rim characteristics. The edge should not be forgotten either, because some errors become more obvious when the entire circumference of the coin is examined. Another major area of interest is die damage. Coin dies are subjected to tremendous pressure and repeated use, and over time they can develop cracks, breaks, chips, or other abnormalities. When a damaged die strikes a planchet, the resulting feature can appear on multiple coins produced from that die. A die crack may appear as a raised line crossing part of the design, while a larger die break can create a more prominent raised area. A cud can occur when a portion of the die face breaks away, potentially leaving an unusual blank area or raised feature on the finished coin. These die-related characteristics can become especially fascinating because they provide clues about the condition of the die at a particular stage of its production life. Another possibility collectors frequently examine is doubling. A 1985 D quarter may show what appears to be doubled lettering, a doubled date, or doubled elements of the design, but apparent doubling must be evaluated carefully. Not every secondary-looking image is a valuable double die variety. Mechanical or machine doubling can create flattened or shelf-like impressions that may look unusual but do not necessarily have the same significance as a genuine double die. A true double die characteristic results from the creation of the die itself and can display specific forms of separation or distortion in the affected design. Because the difference can be difficult to identify without experience, collectors should compare suspected doubling with reliable references and seek expert opinions when necessary. Another fascinating possibility is a struck-through error. During the striking process, foreign material can sometimes interfere between the die and the planchet, leaving a depression, missing detail, or unusual impression. Depending on the material involved and the size and location of the resulting feature, a struck-through error can become an interesting addition to an error collection. Some struck-through errors are subtle, while others are immediately noticeable because a significant part of the design appears affected. Planchet errors are another category worth investigating. Before a quarter is struck, the metal blank must be prepared to specific dimensions, weight, thickness, and composition. If something goes wrong during the preparation of that blank, the finished coin may show characteristics such as clips, laminations, cracks, or other abnormalities. A genuine clipped planchet can display a curved or straight missing portion along the edge, and certain physical characteristics can help distinguish a legitimate mint-made clip from post-mint damage. A lamination problem can sometimes appear as a separation or peeling area in the metal, although environmental damage can produce similar appearances, which is why careful examination is essential. Perhaps one of the most exciting possibilities would be a wrong planchet error, where a 1985 D quarter is accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination or another type of coin. If such an error were genuine, the coin might have unusual weight, diameter, thickness, or metallic characteristics compared with a standard quarter. A wrong planchet error could potentially attract serious collector attention because it represents a major failure in the planchet preparation or feeding process. However, a different color or unusual weight does not automatically prove that a coin was struck on the wrong planchet. Coins can be altered by corrosion, chemicals, heat, plating, environmental exposure, or other forms of post-mint treatment. Professional examination can be necessary to determine whether an unusual composition or physical measurement truly indicates a mint error. Another possibility involves errors connected with the collar or striking pressure. If the collar does not function properly, the coin may display unusual expansion, rim formation, or edge characteristics. If striking pressure is abnormal, some design details may appear weaker or stronger than expected, although weak strikes alone are not always valuable errors. A weakly struck coin can result from several causes, and collectors need to distinguish a legitimate minting abnormality from ordinary variation. This is why the exact circumstances matter. A coin should not be considered extremely valuable simply because one part of the design appears slightly weaker than another. Condition is another important factor when considering the potential desirability of a rare 1985 D quarter. A dramatic and authenticated mint error preserved in excellent condition can attract considerably more collector interest than the same error on a heavily worn coin. Collectors may examine the sharpness of the design, original luster, surface preservation, contact marks, scratches, stains, and evidence of cleaning. A rare error that has been aggressively polished or chemically treated may lose some of its appeal because collectors generally prefer original surfaces. If you believe your 1985 D quarter could contain a significant error, avoid cleaning it. Do not polish the coin, scrape the surfaces, apply chemicals, or attempt to reshape any damaged portion. Instead, handle it carefully by the edges and keep it protected while you investigate. One of the biggest challenges for beginning collectors is separating genuine mint errors from post-mint damage. A quarter can receive scratches from other coins, dents from impacts, flattening from machinery, damage from tools, or discoloration from environmental exposure. Some of these problems can look dramatic under magnification, but they do not represent valuable mint mistakes. A genuine mint error must have characteristics consistent with an event that occurred during manufacturing. That distinction is critical because internet photographs can make ordinary damage look like a spectacular rarity. This is also why dramatic claims about a $125 million value should be approached carefully. A number appearing in a headline does not establish a coin's market value. An ordinary 1985 D quarter is not automatically worth millions, and even a genuine error does not automatically reach an extraordinary price. A coin's actual market value depends on the exact error, authenticity, rarity, condition, collector demand, and documented sales. If an exceptionally rare 1985 D quarter were professionally authenticated and offered through a legitimate competitive auction, its final price would depend on what serious collectors were willing to pay at that time. Extraordinary valuations require extraordinary evidence. The exciting part is that you do not need to assume every coin is a jackpot to enjoy the hunt. Imagine opening last 1996 P quarter dollar coin. Today we are taking a closer look at the 1996 P Washington quarter dollar and the extraordinary possibility that a particular example with a genuine mint error or unusual variety could be worth dramatically more than its ordinary face value. You may have heard sensational claims that a 1996 P quarter dollar could be worth as much as $120 million, but it is important to understand that such a huge figure is an extraordinary hypothetical claim rather than the established value of an ordinary 1996 P quarter. Most 1996 P quarters are common circulation coins and are not worth anywhere near millions, but the real excitement begins when a particular coin has an authentic minting error, unusual planchet, dramatic striking mistake, rare die characteristic, or exceptional condition that separates it from ordinary examples. The 1996 P quarter carries the P Mint mark associated with the Philadelphia Mint, and like other quarters from this period, it was produced through a highly organized manufacturing process involving blank planchets, dies, collars, presses, and mechanical feeding systems. Even a sophisticated production system can occasionally produce unusual pieces, and when those pieces escape normal detection, they can eventually become fascinating discoveries for collectors. One of the most exciting possibilities to investigate on a 1996 P quarter is an off-center strike. This type of mint error occurs when the blank planchet is not correctly positioned between the dies at the moment the coin is struck, causing the design to shift away from the center. A dramatic off-center quarter can have a large portion of the design missing from one side while the opposite side shows an unusually large area of blank metal. If the date and P Mint mark remain visible, the coin can be easier to identify, and a major, authentic displacement can make the piece particularly interesting to error collectors. The degree of displacement matters, but so do the overall appearance, condition, and authenticity. Another possibility is a broad strike, which can occur when the collar fails to contain the planchet properly during striking. The collar normally helps control the coin's shape and diameter, but if the planchet escapes that containment during the strike, the metal may spread outward, producing a wider or differently shaped coin. A genuine broad-struck 1996 P quarter can look dramatically different from a normal quarter, and its unusual rim and overall dimensions may provide important clues. Collectors should compare the suspicious coin with a normal quarter and carefully examine the rim and edge rather than relying only on the front and back. Another fascinating category is die damage, including die cracks, die breaks, and cuds. Coin dies experience enormous pressure as they strike repeated pieces, and eventually they can develop cracks or breaks. When those problems are transferred to a coin, the result may appear as raised lines, raised blobs, missing portions of design, or other unusual characteristics. A die crack can travel through the lettering or design, while a larger die break can create a prominent raised area. A cud may occur when a portion of the die face breaks away, leaving an unusual area where the design should normally appear. These features can be especially interesting because they can provide evidence of a particular die state and may sometimes appear on more than one coin produced from the same damaged die. Another possibility that attracts enormous attention from collectors is doubling. If a 1996 P quarter shows what appears to be doubled lettering, a doubled date, or doubled design elements, it may deserve closer examination, but not every apparent doubling represents a valuable double die variety. Mechanical doubling can occur during the striking process and can create flattened or shelf-like secondary impressions. A genuine double die is associated with the creation of the die itself and can display different forms of separation and design distortion. The difference can be subtle, so collectors should compare suspected doubling with trusted numismatic references and known examples. Magnification can help reveal details, but magnification alone cannot prove that a coin is a rare double die. Another possibility is a struck-through error, where foreign material becomes trapped between the die and the planchet during striking. The material can interfere with the transfer of the design and leave behind an unusual depression, missing detail, or distorted section. Depending on the material and location, a struck-through error can range from subtle to dramatic. A genuine struck-through quarter can be fascinating because it preserves evidence of something that interfered with the normal striking process. Planchet errors are another important area for collectors. Before a quarter is struck, the metal blank must have the appropriate weight, thickness, diameter, and composition. Problems can sometimes occur before the striking stage, resulting in clipped planchets, cracks, laminations, incomplete blanks, or other unusual characteristics. A genuine clipped planchet may have a curved or straight portion missing from the edge, and collectors can study the surrounding metal flow to determine whether the feature is consistent with a legitimate mint-made clip. A coin damaged after leaving the mint can sometimes look similar, which is why careful examination is necessary. A lamination problem may appear as separation or peeling in the metal, but environmental damage and corrosion can create similar appearances. This is another reason that an unusual-looking coin should not automatically be described as a major mint error. Perhaps one of the most dramatic possibilities would be a wrong planchet error, where a 1996 P quarter is accidentally struck on a blank intended for another denomination or another type of coin. A wrong planchet quarter could potentially have an unusual weight, diameter, thickness, or metallic appearance compared with a normal quarter. If authenticated, such an error could be highly interesting because it represents a significant failure in the planchet handling process. However, collectors must be cautious because unusual weight or color alone does not prove a wrong planchet error. Corrosion, chemical treatment, environmental exposure, damage, or other alterations can change a coin's appearance or weight. Professional examination and composition testing may be required to determine what actually happened. Another possibility is a double-struck or multiple-struck coin. If a coin receives more than one strike and the second strike occurs in a different position, portions of the design can overlap, shift, or appear duplicated. A genuine double strike can be an impressive error, especially when the second impression is clearly visible and the characteristics indicate that both strikes occurred during the minting process. Some coins can also show rotated or misaligned strikes, creating unusual relationships between the obverse and reverse designs. Again, collectors must distinguish authentic minting abnormalities from damage that occurred after circulation. The edge and collar deserve special attention because some errors are easier to identify there than anywhere else on the coin. A collar-related problem may create unusual rim formation, expansion, or edge characteristics. Since many people only look at the portrait and reverse, they may completely miss an important clue around the perimeter. Turning the coin slowly and inspecting its entire edge can reveal characteristics that deserve further investigation. Another possible issue is a weak strike, but weak details should not automatically be treated as a valuable error. Some weakly struck coins can result from normal variations in striking pressure or other production factors, and not every weak strike is rare. Collectors should determine whether the unusual appearance corresponds to a recognized error category or simply reflects ordinary manufacturing variation. Unusual color should also be treated carefully. A 1996 P quarter with a strange gold, reddish, dark, pale, or otherwise unusual color may attract attention, but color alone does not establish a valuable mint error. Exposure to chemicals, heat, environmental conditions, cleaning products, or other substances can alter a coin after it leaves the mint. If the color is caused by an unusual composition or legitimate minting process, professional testing can help establish that fact. Condition is another major factor in the potential desirability of an exceptional 1996 P quarter. A dramatic, authenticated error in excellent condition can attract much more attention than a heavily circulated example of the same error. Collectors often look for strong details, original surfaces, natural luster, minimal scratches, limited contact marks, and overall preservation. A coin that has been polished, cleaned, scratched, or chemically treated may lose collector appeal. If you believe your 1996 P quarter has a significant error, one of the most important things you can do is leave it alone. Do not polish it, scrub it, scrape it, apply chemicals, or attempt to reshape it. Cleaning can permanently alter the surfaces and may reduce the coin's desirability. Handle the coin carefully by the edges and keep it protected while researching the feature. One of the biggest challenges in coin collecting is separating genuine mint errors from post-mint damage. A coin can be damaged by other coins, vending machines, tools, machinery, impacts, chemicals, heat, or decay.